Hello everybody, my name is Blue and welcome to another episode of Punapuu Ridge. And unfortunately this episode there was something that went up in the recording, something went wrong, I'm not sure what happened. But it's really unfortunate because basically I lost almost all the recording, right? And basically all the footage is gone. Luckily, just to make up a bit, I did a more extensive walkthrough at the end of this video, and you can see a nice cinematic as you've seen at the beginning of the video as well. But the actual speed build is going to be extremely limited, and it's going to be limited to this little feature cliffside that I'm building right now, and then the actual ban where the Wisent will be able to stay. And yeah, I haven't told you before, but this episode will be about the Wisent. We will be building an enclosure for the beautiful European Bison, which is the biggest animal of the pack, I believe, and it is a beauty. When you see the European Bison, you really realize that the American Bison needs an overhaul. It really needs a remaster. Because not only is it smaller than the European Bison, which is really weird, since the European Bison is definitely roughly the same size. So they definitely should make the Bison a bit bigger, because it looks really odd. But also just the quality of it. The Wisent has impeccable quality. It is quite amazing. So I thought for the European Bison I would do a really nice and big, very impressive looking enclosure, which is, like I said, it's really unfortunate that I've basically lost all the footage. I don't know what went wrong really. Like, I'm absolutely not sure what happened, but something happened and all of the footage is gone, essentially. But at least you can see this little bit, you can see me building the rock. And as I said, definitely stick around at the end, because I will be doing a walkthrough where I explain a bit what I've actually built, since I'm not able to explain it all now, since I've lost all the footage, so I can't really explain all the stuff I'm building. So I will explain it briefly during the walkthrough at the end of this episode, so definitely watch it. Definitely watch the end. But yeah, what I'm doing right now actually is I'm building this really big cliff face, because I thought it would be really cool for the European Bison to have this kind of naturalistic, like, valley look, where you have cliffs on both sides, and then there's just, well, flatness, just grassland, where the Wisent can graze and enjoy their time. And this really felt cool, and it feels like, you know, since Eurasia is such a vast continent, it feels like these large mountainous structures you'd have, or cliff structures you'd have. So yeah, I really liked building that naturalistic side of the zoo as well. You know, there's nature as well, which is really enjoyable to do. And then I have this elevated path kind of thing where you can go into the enclosure and you can have a better view of the European Bison from an elevated view. So that's basically what this area is. And you know, it works out really nicely. I must say, it feels like what a zoo would feel like, minus maybe the cliff face. But even the cliff face, I feel like a lot of zoos have these big kind of cliffs that they would build to tie it in with the nature aspect of the zoo as well. But about the bison, shall we? So the European bison it's actually a bison that has, it's a species, sorry, that has quite a very exciting a conservation story. You really have to read about it. I don't know the details myself, but I think it's something Poland is involved in a lot. I think Poland has helped repopulate the Wisent population in Europe. So props to them. It's really, you should read about it. It's really interesting how this animal that was basically driven to extinction in Europe because of its densely populated human areas. You know, Europe is quite densely populated for quite a long time as well, and it's a relatively small continent, and with it having such a long history with people, you know, a lot of these animals can't really get to fit their place in the ecosystem anymore, which is really sad. But the Wisent being one of the big megafauna in Europe, but luckily because of conservation efforts, the populations have been kind of kept stable, which is really nice to see that happened. So it's a really nice conservation story. You should really read about it. And it's a nice animal as well, because I think it is one of the biggest animals in Europe. I think. Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest, at least ungulates in Europe. And it's I think it's something for a European at least to be really proud of, that we have such beautiful wildlife. And to actually explain the differences between the European and American bison, since I feel like a lot of you don't really know what the exact differences are. Basically, it comes to not specifically the size, because they are roughly the same size, although I think American bison is slightly more massive, but the European bison actually has a slightly taller shoulder, so the actual total like height of the animal is just slightly taller for the European species compared to the American one. And the actual horns of the European bison are also bigger, like they have more substantial horns compared to the American bison, which have smaller horns. So they differ in different aspects. So when it comes to horns and actual shoulder height, the European bison are bigger, but when it comes to overall mass, the American bison is definitely more massive. Which unfortunately does not show in this game, because in this game the European bison is more massive, which is not quite accurate. But yeah, so that's the main differences between the European and American bison, but the key difference is that if you see one in Europe, it's probably a European bison, and if you see one in the Americas, it's most probably an American bison. That is quite an interesting thing to keep in mind, because those are quite handy indicators when it comes to the differences between the American and European bison. Now in the meantime, I'm building the barn, and this is the only other thing you will actually see me build, because the rest is lost, unfortunately. But this barn is basically, just like the previous build with the wild boar, is very heavily inspired by this very European style farm kind of architecture. I'm using the same building palette, so I'm using the rustic foundation, the rustic European bricks. I'm using the or stone, whatever you want to call it. I'm using the Indonesian temple brick as actual wall pieces for the most of this building, and then also using those tiled, slated, I mean, like twilight roof pieces as well. And then I actually add some more things. Like you can see, I'm using those twilight doors as a wooden kind of cover on part of the wall. I was looking at some images, and a lot of these barns, they cover parts of the wall with wood for either just, you know, DIY fixing it up because it's a bit broken, you know, fixing some holes or whatever. But it looks very cozy. It's like very DIY-y, but like not professionally done specifically. But that's the kind of feeling it brings up for me. And then also I use some plaster pieces, as you'll see in a bit, because when I was looking at images, a lot of these also kind of, they have the actual raw brick of the building, but a lot of these barns, they plaster over these brick for a lot of them. So I did that as well. I add some plaster here and there, but it's like weathered, you know, it's not all plastered, but at least the top is still nicely finished off with plaster, as you will see soon. And then this little extension building is what I imagine would be a storage unit for hay or other food supplies for the Wisent, whilst the actual main bit would be where the Wisent can actually rest and have a nap, basically. Also for the roof itself, I used the same twilight or wooden like panel pieces I've also used for the wild boar barn that I built there as well. And besides that, that's basically it for the speed build, but definitely stay tuned. As I said, in a minute I will explain more into detail about the other stuff I've built that you've missed, unfortunately. But definitely stay tuned and enjoy the rest of the speed build, or at least whatever is left, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Alright, so since I lost most of the recording, I will treat you with a thorough walkthrough at the end of this video. It's really unfortunate I lost all the footage. I'm so annoyed about it. Like, really annoyed about it, because you've basically missed all of it. You've seen me build that building, and like that cliffside, I think. And like, that's about it. But there is a lot to it, okay? This is a big enclosure, so it's really annoying that I missed this really big enclosure. But yeah, I'm just annoyed at myself, really. I should have known. Oh well. So this is the Wisent, or the European Bison, and they have quite the enclosure. I was really happy with this result, so it's just extra frustrating that you've missed it all, because yeah, it's quite a big enclosure with quite some detail. You have double fencing with a little moat to keep them at bay a bit. You know, they're big animals. You don't want them to, you know, escape and cause havoc. And then this barn building inspired by some real barn, like European barns. A nice cliff face, lovely cliff face even, with the waterfall and the lake. Then let's go over there, right? The elevated bit. So yeah, there's a nice seating area as well. You can sit, have a look at these wonderful animals. And here as well. Then over here, obviously this is all empty yet. This is yet to be added. But we can go up here. And we can have a really nice view of the Wisent up here as well. And there's a cool natural archway, which I think that did make it in, if I do remember. That did make it in the video. In the speed build. But yeah, there's a nice elevated bit up here where we can look at the Wisent do their thing, I guess, being a Wisent. And then there's a little barn building over there, which is basically like the staff entrance building. And then that's the main like sleeping area where they can rest. So there's a nice tree line at the back as well, and I used these metal fences I've used all around here as well, but I also used a wooden fence behind it at the back, or just to like shade it off a bit, otherwise it looked a bit too open. So I used that wooden fence behind there as well. And the actual cliff face over there is the face I used, like the same like kind of layout I used for this, just copied it over there and added the waterfall and stuff like that. And then this actual barn to the side is also copied over from, if you remember the previous video with the wild boars, they got this very similar looking barn, but I adjusted bits and bobs, but it's still very similar. But I removed the shaded area, I changed the color of the roof, and I also I completely textured the roof with this extra design here as well. So there's that. And then for this barn building, I used the same pieces that I've been using for the rest of this zoo already, with the rustic bricks, the Indonesian temple bricks, and the twilight roof. So yeah, a very recurring theme right there. And then for the nature, I used a mix of just the European and Asian temperate and tiger plants. But I also scattered around a lot of these saplings, because it felt like it kind of turned this first quite barren looking environment into something very alive, since there is new life growing. You know, there's actual action going on, it feels like, instead of just having the big trees and the shrubs. And then as you can see, the metal fence goes across and goes along all the way around, but it actually stops over there when it then turns into this mesh fence in the moat, with also a low mesh fence, just to keep the guests away from the main fence. And then I'd like to mention a bit more of planning, since this is the last proper European animal, as in from temperate Europe, Western temperate Europe, I guess. All the rest will be in different like themes. We will still have this kind of theme perhaps, but all the other builds in this zoo will have a slightly different theme, since we'll move over either to the Arctic or over to Asia. So this area will be probably the Himalayan area for the Takin or the Saiga. Not sure yet. And then on the other side will be the contrary, either the Himalayan area or the area for the Saiga. And then we'll have an Arctic area for our Wolverines as well, which will get a little Arctic build. So that's about it, really. So yet again, I apologize for the corrupted speed build file, but I guess that's what you'll have to do. And I hope next time there will be no problems with the recording, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.